All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are heading into the home stretch and want to say thank you to our final panel for hanging with us today and for your patience as well. We are really grateful. And of course, we have the best for last. Am I right? Okay, there's a lot of enthusiasm. We're really excited, you guys. Hot day. All right. So first of all, we have Pete Halme, who's a board member of the San Diego Fishermen's Working Group. His presentation is going to include the establishment of Fishermen's Market, gentrification of the Port of San Diego, and of course innovations in capacity building through an apprenticeship program, which is pretty exciting and exactly what we need to be able to see. Shad Contreras, president of the San Diego Ocean Foundation, is going to present experiences in the Lobster Advisory Committee and how we came to proposal ideas. And of course, we have, I am losing here. There we go. We have Ben Platt, board member with the California Salmon Council, which he's not back yet, but he's getting an adult beverage, we've been told. So I'm kidding. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. Bob Bertelli is unable to join us today, but we do have Steve Rudy, who's president of the California Fisheries and Seafood Institute, and then he is going to, this is amazing, he's going to double dip and give us an update on the Sea Urchin Commission as well, is what I'm told. So I'm excited about that. That's fantastic. And gentlemen, thank you so much for hanging with us today, and also thank you for traveling. We're really appreciative as well. Pete, we're going to start with you.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Pete Halme. I want to thank you for giving us this opportunity.
Of course.
And I want to thank Tom for keeping the light burning all these years. If it weren't for him, and it didn't cost much to bribe him to have me invited here.
Hey, there we go. Hi, dang.
And my talk is going to be, I know we discussed for hours this morning about the issues that are prevalent today. I want to tell you that I've been fishing almost 50 years. These times, these hard times will pass, good times will come, but we should make some plans for the future. Never forget looking 10 years, 15 years down the road. And so I have a slide up there because I can't remember what I was talking about. So first I'm going to talk about fishermen's markets. We struggled a long time, about 3-4 years in San Diego, establishing a fisherman's market right on the docks. And then Supervisor Cox got a hold of it, and between Supervisor Cox and Chairman Bob Nelson of the port, the fisherman's market opened 2 weeks later. To great fanfare, we had 1,500 people showed up on the first day.
What a great day, wasn't it?
It was, and we had 5 fishermen. We didn't know what to expect.
There we go.
And so we had, it kind of reminded me of the guy that had 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, and he fed a lot of people. But people saw this, the fishermen, this is right in the port. Fishermen saw this, and between then and now, we have over 20 fishermen that participate every once in a while. So with the demand came the fishermen doing it.
And a nice new market, right, for them?
Yes, yeah, great market. I don't want to go into all the different things, but what we've had to figure out is to provide a steady supply of a large variety of species. So you can't fish one thing or another thing. We got to spread right across the board. And one of the big sales items is our swordfish. If you look at the picture on the right-hand side, we take a large swordfish, and the customer tells us what size he wants. We cut the steak for him and give it to him right there.
Wow.
And so we have all these fish, plus a lot of underutilized species that people now are using. On any given day, we bring in about 20 different species of fish, or any given Saturday, 20 different species. And the fishermen now talk amongst one another every Saturday, what are you fishing for, what should I get, and so on. So we won't bring a lot of any one thing. It'll be something in every bin. Cool. And this shows up every week. And then when this started, Supervisor Cox persuaded Tony Atkins to run a bill called the Pacific to Plate Bill, and it went through the Assembly and the Senate with no negative votes, 0 negative votes in both houses.
Bipartisan.
Yeah, it was, and it went through because we did the planning up front. We met with about 30 people up front for a few months, and decided what needed to be in there, what would benefit the fishermen, what would benefit the Department of Health, and it was approved by the governor. So it mainly allowed fishermen's markets to exist in the ports, which wasn't possible before. But here's the way San Diego looked in 1930. One fishing boat on top of the other. And this doesn't exist anymore. Now it's a multi-purpose port, but we only have one area along the Embarcadero that's for fishing, and another area off, there's basically 2 marinas for commercial fishing boats left. And the problem is, up on top is one of the commercial fishing boats. The problem is, you see on the right, I learned to deal with bureaucracy by printing it so small that nobody can read it. So I'll interpret it for you. To be a working fishing harbor, it's got to have 20 elements in it. And that way people can come visit it and see how it works. They can see the boats tying up, repairing the boats, mending the nets, offloading the fish, and then buying the fish. All these are elements of what makes it work. If you just have a bunch of boats tied up in some derelict docks, that doesn't work, and then the port is not going to allow that. But I think if you do it right, you can make it an attraction for the port to have a beautiful fishing harbor. And they already are enamored with the fisherman's market because it brings 400 or 500 people every Saturday down to the docks. So this is what has happened. But in order to continue our fisheries, we got to look at this aging population of fishermen and start to see how do we bring young people in. And any other business, you don't buy a 18-wheeler and they let you drive it without some knowledge of how to do it. Well, why should we allow fishermen to say, you can buy a boat and you're a fisherman the next day? There should be, and there always used to be, there used to be a progression. You know, you worked on gear, then you worked as a deckhand, and then you run the boat, and then you own the boat later on. There was a kind of progression, and I don't see that anymore. And I also don't see the lack of foresight either by fishermen or the government agencies. The fishermen said, no, we got enough fishermen. We don't want any new ones. Well, if the average age is around 60 years old, 20 years from now, where are we going to be? And where we're going to be is where we start planning today to be there, and not 20 years from now. So
1 minute.
I'm just, that's more than enough. Because I could go back and list the 20 items one by one. There's some program requirements. We've talked to the California Division of Apprentices, and they're willing to work with us, and they provide subsidies. 40% or something is paid for the apprenticeship program, but they have to do 2,000 hours. They have to do some college training. We've talked to junior colleges and so on. They're enthusiastic. Apparently, there's enough assistant managers at McDonald's. They don't need any more. So we want to train a few people to be fishermen. And they'll be better fishermen than what we have been. Because in small fisheries, the collection of data cannot be done by outside people. It's got to be done by the industry. So when a young guy starts, he can be trained to do that kind of data collection and sharing and so on, and we'll go to co-management. At my age, I see these answers as intergenerational. I'm 74, and 26 more years, I turn 100, and they kick me out. Thank you.
No. Hey, thank you so much. Great job. And loved seeing the market. I mean, that's significant. And who would have thought 10 years ago, right, that would have been viable? And people want freshly sourced food, right?
Exactly. And they want to talk to the fishermen. Who brought this fish in? The chain of custody goes from me to you is different than going halfway around the world.
And they're never going to see that. Never going to get that at Safeway, right? No, nothing against Safeway, but being able to talk with the individual who actually caught the fish, that's a hell of an experience. That's great.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you. You're
in San Diego. I can't bribe you with fish, but
no.
I can sell it to you at a good price.
All right. I can't even do that. Dang. I will pay full price, and it looks exciting. Dang. Hey, thank you very much. All right. We have the president of the San Diego Oceans Foundation, Chad. Thank you so much for joining us. How you doing, sir? It's good to see you, and thank you so much for making the trek.
Oh, no problem. And thank you, Chairman, and thank you all. Thank you, Tom, for putting this together on such short notice. I'm the president of the San Diego Oceans Foundation, working with community research and the community and collaborative research, as well as I'm a commercial lobster fisherman. I was also on the department's advisory board for the California Lobster Fishery Management Plan. And I was just going to give you some of my experiences with that, as well as my the research that we did that collaboratively between fishermen, the department, and scientists was one of the largest lobster projects of its kind for the baseline study in the South that put a lot of input into this fisheries future and understanding of its life cycles. The Fishing Game Department created an advisory commission based on all user groups to put together concepts and ideas for the future of this fishery management plan, which is one of the first ones they've done in 10 years, through which the department brought forward several examples of other lobster fisheries, but none compare to California's lobster fishery, because we have a much larger sport component in our lobster fishery than pretty much any other in the world. So we created a unique opportunity to put all user groups, whether they be consumptive or not, to create a plan that would work best, that we could work together and create something that was adaptive. And that with the department's leadership, we came up with several opportunities, and through that we came up with a trap limit for the commercial fishery that we're working on closing that out, and some new looks into the sport take of the fishery, and just kind of modeling this future of this fishery and keeping it successful and keeping it sustainable. And the collaboration of our fishery, the research that we did on this project was instrumental, and it was incredible to actually get scientists and fishermen directly involved with one another in the development of the projects and getting those projects to fruition with all parties' involvement versus somebody creating a project and then just hiring people to do it. We changed the project to adapt to questions that were created in the middle of the project when had a much higher success. And that's really all I have to say.
No, thank you so much. Quick question. So when you wanted to be able to implement limits, right, to be able to ensure that the fishery was going to be robust in years to come, what was that discussion like as far as the change in culture?
The trap limit discussion was actually brought forth very early on by members of the department, and essentially the outreaching of the fishery telling us we should be looking at trap limits in 2010
But looking and implementing are two different things, right? And trying
Yes.
to get that implemented.
Well, ironically, when we created transferability in this fishery years before, the commercial fishery asked for a trap limit and was denied that it was not viable at that time.
Really?
So now we had to reopen in that discussion, which was very long. There was many nights and no sleep for me and several other fishermen involved in organizing this. Ultimately, we came up with something that the majority of the fleet could agree with, or live with, I should say. Sure. Trying to keep it affordable for us so that we didn't get ourselves into a situation where we're creating a fishery management plan that got overly expensive to do, so that if we have an issue where we shut down the fishery, we're not stuck with a very high dollar amount that we don't get to use. As well as keeping some kind of versatility to the fishery, so you could handle small boat fleet and a large boat fleet. Now, it's not ideal by any means, but sitting in a room where I have essentially user groups, non-user groups, sport and commercial, and we butted heads nonstop till we got to a point where we agreed on this was a very, I'm taking a third of my gear out of the ocean. And so are several other commercial fishermen are taking significant amounts of gear, and it doesn't look that way, but we're willing to do this for conservation efforts. And we would hope to see the sports sector do the exact same thing so we can share in this. Due to the MPAs and closures, the vast majority of our prime habitat in the South was taken away for conservation. Now, what's left for user groups we have to give even more away to accommodate all user groups. So in that process, it was a very harsh battle to come up with a trap limit.
And that's why I bring it up. I cannot imagine and very impressed, right, to be able to see that through. And as you said, many sleepless nights, I'm sure, because it is never easy when you're having to be able to make that pivot, right?
It was, well, the interesting thing enough was I believe we lost 3 or 4 department managers of the fishery management plan due to retirement or just leaving the job in the process of trying to get to a result of this.
So you're saying you're living the dream?
So it was a quest.
Yeah.
I think Monty Python handled it best. There were 3 questions to be asked, and some of us didn't get the right one.
Wow. Well, congratulations, really, and an enormous amount of work, and really appreciate you sharing the story.
I wish I could elaborate better, but
Are you kidding me?
I'm new to this.
You did a fantastic job. Thank you very much. Great job, by the way. All right, we're going to be moving on to Mr. Platt. He is a board member, and we heard from him earlier in regards to, with his crabbing hat on, he is now going to talk with us about the California Salmon Council. It's good to see you again, sir.
Thank you, Chairman McGuire, Mr. Westlow. Sorry you got to listen to me twice.
I'm going to have you pull that mic a little closer to you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, our director is actually doing Salmon Council work in Washington right now, so I'm sitting in. My name is Ben Platt. I'm a crabber and a salmon troller fisherman who lives in Sonoma County. I've been a member of the Salmon Council since 2014. The council was created by the state legislature in 1989 and after referendum became operational in 1990. As a matter of fact, Zeke Grader wrote the original legislation. The Salmon Council is still the only official group for marketing of California king salmon. 9 California Salmon Council Board of Directors represent both salmon fishermen, handler, processors, and a public member. We are an advisory state agency to the California Department of Food and Agriculture with oversight by the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. The council collects assessments on all salmon landed in California in the commercial fishery. Funds are used to promote wild-caught salmon to consumers and the retail food service trade. In the past, we were able to produce radio and television commercials and do a pretty good job of it. In the last 10 years or so, as landings have been uneven, we've had to curtail advertising campaigns and focus more on traditional public relations. We sponsor restaurant competitions, participate in the Farm to Fork events in Sacramento in 2014-15 most recently. We exhibit at the Boston Seafood Show every year to promote our California Kings as the finest salmon in the world, which, by the way, that's a view that's shared by chefs throughout the world as well. We also rejoined the Buy California Marketing Agreement, which is more widely known as California Grown. David Goldenberg, our executive director, provided the committee a handout which lists more promotional activities that we have undertaken. 4 years of drought and warm El Nino currents in the oceans have had negative impacts on the California salmon troll fishery. Previously, we had a total closure of the fishery in 2008 and 2009 and very limited harvests in 2010 and 11. Our council played a central role in helping to obtain and distribute disaster assistance in 2007, 2009, and 2010. Since 2006, we have also been working on a cooperative research project with the National Marine Fisheries Service by employing fishermen to collect salmon tissue samples to analyze salmon DNA. It is our goal to use the GSI info from this project to be able to identify the migrations of ocean salmon in real time in order to avoid stocks of concern while being able to target more abundant stocks. In fact, I'm sitting in today for our executive director, who is in Washington, D.C., seeking appropriation for a coast-wide GSI funding project for California, Oregon, and Washington. And we'd like to encourage the committee to support this effort with a letter to a congressional representatives if possible. We've also included a 2-page handout on the GSI project with the report from Mr. Goldenberg. Currently, we are in the process of coordinating a referendum through the California Department of Agriculture to have salmon handlers and processors join fishermen in paying equal assessments so we can double our annual budget in order to expand marketing and promotional outreach. The deadline for the referendum vote is February 22nd, coming up soon. So as a fisherman, I also fish California Dungeness crab. During the current long-term delay of crab season, the need for a council or a commission like our Salmon Council, but for the crab industry, has become apparent. We need an official body in the crab fishery for marketing and communicating with media, consumers, and the food trade. Mr. Goldenberg is available to the Joint Committee at a later date to provide insight on how such a body could be established. While he is in Washington, Mr. Goldenberg will also be helping to lobby our California members for a disaster appropriation for the crab fleet.
That's great.
So thank you for your attention, and if there's any questions I can answer, I will.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Mr. Weslow and I, along with the vice chair, have been having a lot of discussions in regards to that commission, wanting to be able to pull folks together, obviously, from crab as well as shellfish here and meeting in the next 30 to 60 days to start that discussion to be able to see. I think what we would need to do then is have a hearing later this year, because we would need to be able to figure out what that would look like, and frankly, it would have to be a self-assessed fee on industry and scope, et cetera. So we'd like to be able to kick that process off. Wanting to be able to get some additional feedback, though. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Grateful. And then next time you're up, we just need to carpool, right? Pick you up in Windsor. So there we go. All right. Thanks so much. All right. You do not need your club card for this next presentation. It's a 2-for-1. We have a California Fisheries and Seafood Institute update, and then also, which we're really grateful for, talking about the Sea Urchin Commission. And then, if you don't mind, and I'm calling an audible on this as well, we had heard earlier, particularly on bullgrass and urchin habitat on the North Coast, if you wouldn't mind commenting on that at the end of your words, and would love to get your take on that.